Hey guys, welcome back to another video. ProBark Gamer here. In today's video, I'm going to be going over a bunch of different mage armors and weapons and enchants that are used to create the best mage setup possible. I'll be going over cheaper ones and more expensive ones, all in today's video. So check the description for timestamps about which section is what. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So there are many different armor sets useful when using mage. There's the adaptive, there's a bunch of different stuff. But I'm going to start off with the cheapest ones. So, the cheapest armor set is going to be a Bonzo Helm. 5-star would be best if possible. And Zombie Soldier. Now, you could either get the epic ones, or the legendary ones. Cost more, 500k, 2 mil. They cost about 4 mil for the entire set, plus Bonzo Mask, which costs about 400k. But if you were to use the epic armor sets, it would cost you about 500,000, and then of course the weapon. But I'll go over that later. So 500,000 for an armor set is decently good. Most people can afford that. It's not super hard to get, and it is quite nice to have. Tanky, if you die it'll let you respawn, and you can get a bunch of mana. So that was the cheapest armor set. It could have been better, but it served its purpose. It was pretty tanky, I had a good amount of mana. Everything worked pretty well, but there's still a lot better armor sets that you can use. So for our next armor set, this is a mid-tier armor set. It is decently expensive. It's more expensive than the previous one, but it is better. This armor set is basically the exact same thing, except the legendary version. And so instead of having the epic version, you now have the legendary version. The one thing about this is it is a lot more expensive. The past armor set cost about 500k in total. This one cost 600k for the boots, 1.4 million for the leggings, and 1.9 million for the chest. So it costs about 4.5 million coins, plus getting it to Ultimate Wise 5 and everything like that. And this armor set is very good. This is the armor set that I still use today. It gives you a good amount of defense, a good amount of HP, so it's pretty tanky, and you can get a lot of mana from it. Addition from having the Bonzo Staff perk, where if you die it will respawn you. So that armor set is very, very good. And now the next armor set is the adaptive armor. You can either get the full set of adaptive armor. That's usually what I've seen a lot. Now this armor is a lot more expensive. 1.1 mil for the boots, 2 mil for the helmet, so 3 mil, 2.5 mil, so we're about at 5.5 mil. And the chest plates go for a lot more of 7.5 mil. So if you're looking for this armor set, you're looking at about 12 to 15 million coins, depending on the reforges that are on it and everything like that. The last armor that I would suggest using for mage, and it's a little controversial, is the actually wise armor, and for one specific reason. I would suggest only using wise armor if you have this set up, which is kind of hard to do, but it is worth it. And that is the wise armor because of its ability of 2/3 mana, and you can convert it to a dungeon item. So converting an item to the dungeon gives about, it's a little bit iffy depending on the rarity. Already, if we were to put wisdom and necrotic on this, we would be getting 375 intelligence, and because even with the base stats, it's almost a little over doubled, we'd be getting about 1,000 mana per piece with ease, in addition to getting a bunch of HP in defense, which is more than the... You can't salvage or buy items off the auction house to get Dragon Essence. Now, this item is very expensive and just takes a lot of grinding to get. The biggest thing is, the only thing that makes it worth it is the converting it and 5-starring it. However, this takes a lot of Dragon Essence. You have to actually be there and kill dragons. Now, you could buy Dragon Essence or pay some of your guild members, use some of theirs to level it up. But either way, it's going to take a lot more grinding, a lot more money, I'm assuming. I don't know the prices of Dragon Essence. I don't think really anyone is using Dragon Essence, so I have no clue. But that's going to be the best armor. So those are all of the armor sets that can be used for Mage. And now I'm going to go over everything else that you need in Mage setup. Weapons, enchants, reforges, pets, everything like that. Now, for the reforges, Necrotic is the best for everything because it gives the most intelligence. So that would be the best. However, it costs 150,000 coins to put on. And you need to get the Necromancer's Brooch, which costs about 60,000. So, per piece, that's about 200,000. So, for the entire armor set, 800,000 about for that reforge. Now, the other reforge that is almost just as good is the Wise Reforge. As you can see, it gives you a little bit less intelligence, a little bit more speed, and a little bit of HP. However, product is a lot better because it gives you a lot more intelligence, and for Mage, the biggest thing that you need is intelligence and to not die. So the Wise is the cheapest armor, the cheapest enchant to use. Now for the enchantments, there's one enchantment that everyone has really, I feel like, skipped over. No one's really talked about it. So of course, having Growth 5, Prot 5, Thorns, Depth Strider, Feather Falling, everything like that, of course, 5-starring it, because this is a very expensive enchant. And that enchant is Wisdom. It costs about 4 million coins for Wisdom 5. You can get Wisdom 1 or whatever. But basically speaking, what it does is gains you 1 intelligence per level. 100 levels, then you have the max. So if you have 100 levels and have Wisdom 5 in each thing, you'd gain 400 intelligence based on the armor set. Now this is super, super crucial, because when adding the 5 stars to the armor and recruiting it to a dungeon armor and all that stuff, the base stats of it get buffed. I have about 100 intelligence extra, so instead of having 150, I would have 250. Now this is very, very important, because base stats determine everything. And each time you 5-star it, it'll gain a 10% stat bonus. So, for armor that is already zombie soldiers, it's converted to dungeon, so the base stats will be multiplied by about 125%, so a little over double. As we can see here, 150 intelligence, and then in dungeons I get 348, so a little bit over double intelligence. But, if you have the Wisdom enchant on it, you gain an extra 100 intelligence per piece. So, instead of this number being at 350, you would now have 250 for the base intelligence, and about 570, gaining you over 200 more intelligence per piece. And now I'm going to go on to the weapons portion. So, there's a bunch of different tiers for good mage weapons. If you really don't want to spend a lot of money, but still do some decent damage, the best sword I'd recommend to you is the Dreadlord sword. This thing costs little to nothing for the blue version, and it does not quite as good, but almost as good as the Bonzo staff. So, this is pretty nice, but it's not the best. The epic version costs a little bit more, costs 80,000 more, but it deals almost as much as the Bonzo staff. So, the Dreadlord sword is a very good option. So that's a really cheap weapon, but it's not the best. Like, it's the lowest tier grade weapon, but it's still good. So now we're moving on to the mid-tier range weapons. Now there's a couple weapons that I would suggest using for this. First one being the Bonzo Staff. The Bonzo Staff costs about almost 3 million coins, but it deals pretty good damage, and it deals a pretty big AoE, which is another really, really big thing to it. So the Bonzo Staff is one option. It's nice for clearing rooms and for bosses. Another option that I personally like, but it's just up to your call, is the Aspect of the Dragons. This is really good for clearing rooms, but it sucks against bosses, since it literally can't do any damage against bosses. But it deals almost 10 times more damage than the Bonzo Staff. So the two weapons I would suggest in the mid-tier would be the Aspect of the Dragons or the Bonzo Staff. The last of the mid-tier weapons is the Frozen Scythe. The Frozen Scythe does a good amount of damage, does more than the Bonzo Staff, however it costs more as well. This costs 7 million coins, and you don't get the added intelligence with it, so it's about the same as the Bonzo Staff, but for the cost, you should just get Spirit Scepter. So now we're going to move on to the high-tier weapons. All of these weapons are very, very expensive. The first weapon is the Spirit Scepter. The Spirit Scepter costs about, on bin, the lowest one is 14 million, and does double damage than Bonzo Staff, and has a huge AoE. So, this is the lowest of the mid-tier weapons, or the high-tier weapons. It is very, very good, a lot better than the Bonzo Staff. However, it does cost a lot more mana, which, I don't know, it's okay, but it's not the best. I don't like the mana cost that much. Another weapon is the Ice Spray Wand. This weapon costs a lot to use, but it deals a lot of damage. It deals almost 40,000 damage, so almost double than the Aspect of the Dragons, but this isn't the best because AoE and stuff. But it deals over 10 times the damage of Bonzo Staff. And while you can only use it for 5 seconds, it freezes mobs in place. So if you're fighting like clearing Watcher rooms, you can freeze all the mobs in place in the AoE. And by the time that they get unfrozen, you can just freeze them again, deal damage to them, and they take a 10% increase of damage while you're doing it. So, it is very good for clearing all rooms, for doing Thorn, because you can freeze all the mobs and then just hit them with a bunch of damage and stuff. So, this weapon is very good, but it's very expensive. So, another one of the really late game weapons to use for Mage is, and I haven't seen people use this a lot, it's the Yeti Sword. So this Yeti Sword deals damage, and its ability lets you throw a chunk of ice in the direction and deals 64,000 damage. This weapon does have a cooldown of 1 second, but if you're using the sheep pet, you can basically use this infinitely, yet you have to wait a little bit. This thing does an insane amount of damage. It does 20 times the amount of damage of the Bonzo Staff, 3 times the amount of damage of the Aspect of the Dragons, and it's just good as a sword. So this thing is really good. It does cost a little bit more mana, and it is, again, very, very expensive. It costs 46 million, so very similar to the Ice Spray Wand, and it costs a lot of money to buy. The last thing I wanted to go over was all the Reforges. There's a couple of Reforges that you should go for. This is the Bizarre Reforge. This one is by far the best out of all of them. However, it's a little bit harder to get, because you get intelligence, you get more intelligence than any other Reforge, you get 1 health, similar to the Pretty Reforge, and you gain 1 strength, similar to the Demonic Reforge. So basically speaking, it's the Demonic Reforge and the Pretty Reforge combined. So I'd highly suggest you use Bizarre. It is the best thing to use for Mage, as it makes you so you don't die, and it gives you a lot of intelligence. So, that's going to do it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, so make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next one. Bye!